There used to be a time when the Montero and the Fortuner shared the summit of SUV sales here in the Philippines. Now with the advent of more competition, and with the SUA controversy on the last-gen Montero, the Montero has fallen a bit behind of the Fortuner in terms of sales. But does it deserve to be below the Fortuner in the pecking order of SUVs? Let's find out. Up until 2014, no other mid-size diesel SUV came close to the Montero and the Fortuner in terms of refinement and features. But now we have the Everest, the MUX, the Terra, all of which are pretty capable vehicles and in some aspects may actually be better than the Fortuner and the Montero. It is now a more crowded market, and the Montero's price point reflects its current standing in the Philippines. This GLS variant right here sells for just 1.48 million pesos. It's almost 200,000 pesos cheaper than the base automatic variant of the Fortuner. Anyway, let's compare the Fortuner and the Montero to find out if the price difference is warranted. Let's start with the engine. The Montero is powered by a 2.4-liter engine, which produces 181 horsepower and 430 Nm of torque. Both the 4x2 and the 4x4 variants are powered by the same engine. In comparison, the 4x2 Fortuner is also powered by a 2.4-liter engine, but produces a lot less horsepower at 147 and 400 Nm of torque. The 4x4 Fortuner is powered by a bigger 2.8-liter engine, which still produces less power at 177 horsepower and 450 Nm of torque. The Montero's engine produces more power per liter and more power overall. The engine is mated to an 8-speed auto compared to the Fortuner's 6-speed. I own a first-gen Montero, and on the outside, the new one bears no resemblance to the one it replaces. It now sports Mitsubishi's new Tri-Shield design at the front. Now this is subjective, but I'm not a fan of this design. We're used to seeing faces on vehicles. This is a happy face. This is a sad face. This is an angry face. This is an anglerfish. My problem with Mitsubishi's new design is that it makes the front end look so busy that it's hard to make out a face. It kind of reminds me of Megatron, not from the cartoons, but from the movie. There's so much chrome at the front, and there are so many angles that the headlights get lost into the chrome grille. The rear end of the Montero looks a bit boxy, mostly because the rear window is almost flat, and it's flanked by these ugly vertical taillights, which other reviewers have universally bashed. I'm tempted to say that I like them, just to be different, but I'd be lying. It looks like the taillights are melting. The rear overhang is pretty long, and these upswept lines and the upswept bumper give the illusion that the Montero has a very elongated, upward-pointing rear end. I do prefer the rear end of the Fortuner. While I'm not a fan of the window line, the taillights look better, and the wraparound window give it a less boxy look. Okay, I do like the Montero side profile better. I don't like the Fortuner's long nose, and I prefer the cuts, the creases, and the slightly bulging fenders of the Montero. The Montero GLS also comes with 18-inch wheels, compared to the 17s on the Fortuner G. Montero's design has a lot of quirks. Lots of things that individually I'm not a fan of, but collectively I think they're not as bad. The Montero is a decent looking vehicle, especially in darker colors. But the Montero's rear end is hard not to notice, so I'll give the Fortuner a slight edge on this one. Compared to the Fortuner's interior, the Montero's interior doesn't look as classy. It is more sporty than luxurious. It has a pretty high center tunnel. Personally, I'm not a fan of high center tunnels because it kind of limits my interactions with my passenger, but aesthetically, I think it gives the Montero's interior a cockpit-like feeling. The dashboard looks familiar. It retains some of the design cues of the previous gen's dashboard. It still has these two silver trims that run from the center of the dashboard to the center tunnel. Materials are okay, but not as nice as on the Fortuner G. It lacks the leather accents on the dashboard. The steering wheel is leather covered though, and the sides of the transmission tunnel are very nicely padded. It is a good place to rest your knees while driving. The seats have a similar pattern compared to the Fortuner G, but the brown fabric on the Fortuner looks nicer. The Montero wins over the Fortuner when it comes to electronic features. This base model GLS has a smart key function. As long as you have the key with you, you can lock or unlock the vehicle by pressing this button. It also has a start-stop button, and it also has a backup camera. All of these features are absent on the Fortuner G. Also worth noting is that even the top-of-the-line Fortuner doesn't come with a backup camera. The Montero also has dual-zone climate control, while the Fortuner G only has single-zone manual climate control. The Montero features an electronic parking brake, which may be a plus for those who are looking for high-tech stuff, but I prefer old-fashioned manual parking brakes. Less chances of something going wrong on a simple cable-operated brake. Also imagine how you would disengage an electronic parking brake if your battery goes dead and you need to be towed. This base model GLS is pretty loaded, but if you move up to the higher end GT, you get a sunroof, blind spot detection, adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, features that the top-of-the-line Fortuner doesn't have. The Montero wins this category by a huge margin. The Montero has more headroom for the driver and the second row passengers. The third row seats in both vehicles should just be for smaller adults and children. I can fit in the third row, but my head brushes against the roof on both vehicles. One advantage of the Fortuner is that the second row seat can be moved forward to give more knee room for the third row passengers. Additional knee space for the third row is going to matter more because space back there is already very tight, and unless you're over 6'6", the headroom on the Fortuner is going to be fine anyway. So I'll give this one to the Fortuner. Like the previous gen Montero, the second and third row seats fold flat against the floor. Okay, so you have a continuous flat surface to put your stuff on. In comparison, the Fortuner's third row seats fold up towards the side. Not only does it limit the width of the items that you can put in, it also takes more effort to fold the seats. And also, the flooring on the Fortuner is not flat. Okay, the Montero has better ride quality, in spite of having bigger 18-inch wheels. The suspension seems to be softer. The power difference is also noticeable. You get a more immediate response when you step on the throttle. In terms of driving dynamics, both vehicles are very similar. The turning radius is almost the same, and you get about the same amount of body roll. Of course, there are other intangible factors to consider, such as customer support, depreciation. I can't comment on the quality of service. It is also too early to tell how well both vehicles will depreciate, but currently, both the previous generations of the Montero and the Fortuner sell at about the same price. Mitsubishi is a well-established brand here, and spare parts should be as easy to find as Toyota parts. This Montero GLS automatic sells for 1.48 million pesos. The Fortuner G sells for 1.68 million. The price difference may change eventually, but for now, the argument for the Montero is compelling. You get more features at a significantly lower price. You have to weigh in subjective categories like looks and brand loyalty, But as far as objective categories go, the Montero is the clear winner for me.